Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to That D Plus Show. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site that lets you know what kind of quality to expect right from the name. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and each week we dive into a different Disney Plus offering and discuss its history, how it holds up today, and our general impressions. If you like the show, we would love it if you like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Joining me today, we have Logan Wilkinson. How you doing, Logan?
I'm doing good.
Excellent. And Frank Mazzani. How you doing, Frank?
Doing good.
Been our Disney Plus crew for the last few weeks here, while Cam's stuff is just all packed up, waiting to move in over here. Hopefully this weekend. So we'll see if we can get him back on next week, or how programming is going to change when Cameron and I live in the same place. That's going to be interesting. Today we're going to be talking all about National Treasure, Edge of History. Got choked up just talking about it. Specifically, the first episode, I'm a Ghost. This is the new Disney Plus original series that launched a few weeks ago. We're discussing it because Logan wanted to jump in and discuss the National Treasure show. So, Logan, I'm going to throw it to you. Why did you want to hop into this so much?
For some of the reasons as Frank, I assume too, right? As someone who just loves the original National Treasure so much, and that series with Nick Cage. I didn't know what to expect, and I certainly got something out of it, and we'll get into that. But yeah, I really love National Treasure, especially the first one. And as someone who just loves, globe-trodden, like treasure hunting adventure stories in general, right? As someone who is a massive, massive fan of Indiana Jones, right, and the Uncharted series, and this is sort of that gap in the middle that fills in those kind of two eras for people my age. I have a very soft spot in my heart for the series, and so I was definitely eager to check out the new Disney Plus show.
Yeah, and Frank asked the question that I was going to pose in the episode right before we started recording. Did you, Logan? I believe you just watched the first episode.
I just watched the pilot.
Talking about
yes.
for this. I think I was doing this. God, it might have been like Christmas night when I was like going through and I was like definitely working on something else. Oh yeah, no, that's what it was. I was building. I've shown Logan a picture of this. I got the Lego Yoda's Swamp on Dagobah diorama set for Christmas from my family. And so there's like a couple steps in there where it's just putting all of the individual swamp tiles on the thing. It's like 177 like tiles for one of them. So it's just like a kind of slow and tedious thing. And while I was doing that, I basically was like, now's a good time for me to throw on National Treasure: Edge of History. And actually, what I did first was I rewatched the original National Treasure.
Oh, I love it for you.
And then I went into Edge of History and watched all 3 episodes that like first evening or whatever that were available. And then I was like, all right, I'm hooked up. I'm hooked enough, especially because like I definitely thought more episodes had been out by then. So when the 3rd episode ended and just kind of like the credits continued to roll, I was like, oh, is there not a 4th episode yet? And it's like, oh, nope, has not come out yet. So when that did come out yesterday, when we were recording this on Wednesday, I basically watched it like Tuesday night / Wednesday morning. I was like, hey, that's on. I'll do that while I'm like, playing a couple of rounds of Fortnite or something like that. So it has very much been like a show that I'm watching while doing other things, but like I'm enjoying it enough as like that passive experience. Frank, are you kind of in the same boat?
Yeah, no, because I watched it when I got home from work this afternoon, and I watched the first episode. Yeah. And then after the first episode, it's kind of like your same thing. This I was like, oh, I'll watch the next one. And then the way the second one ends, it does a good job of making me be like, well, now I want to know what happens. And then I watch the 3rd episode, and then the 3rd episode, I'm like, well, now I still want to know what happens. So like I only watched the first 3, but I'm excited to get to that like 4th episode.
Yeah, 3rd episode I think is the most interesting so far of them.
Absolutely,
in particular, especially in the year when Elvis came out, because it's all about like a heist at Graceland. And so yeah, it is their we're gonna steal the Declaration of Independence kind of moment. And yeah, it's probably the fun like, okay, they've set everything up now. now they can kind of like get into the, the national treasureness of all this stuff. But yeah. So we will discuss more of our thoughts there. We're going to keep the conversation largely to the first episode specific. But a couple of the other things that come up may be like sprinkled in here and there throughout. Like nothing too crazy spoilery or anything, especially because as we're recording this, only 4 of the 10 episode season are out. So like, who knows where the season's going to go from here. But a little bit of the history lesson here. The series originally debuted December 14th, 2022, and it will continue to run until February 8th, 2023. And then just in comparison, the original National Treasure came out November 19th, 2004. Good, 17 years ago, 18 years ago. And National Treasure Book of Secrets was December 21st, 2007. So we're a good 15 years removed from like the last time the series was, in our phases and stuff like that. As we are with so many of these, Hocus Pocus 2 earlier, Disenchanted earlier this year, whole bunch of like Disney just being like, what IPs can we milk? All right, here we go. Other releases of the time, I went back to look at, since I don't know when, I'm sure we will eventually do an episode dedicated to the original National Treasure.
Sure, yeah.
But I went ahead and pulled that information for this, in particular also because a lot of this list is the same that we talked about a few weeks ago when we did Halloween Town High, because they came out around the same time. Friday Night Lights and Halloween Town High had come out October 8th, 2004. Team America World Police was October 15th. Sideways, October 22nd. Saw, October 29th. The Incredibles, November 5th. The Polar Express, November 10th. National Treasure came out alongside the original SpongeBob SquarePants movie on November 19th of 2004. And then we were into the Blade Trinity, because this was the era of superhero movies we were in. December 8th. Ocean's 12, December 10th. $1 Million Baby, December 15th. Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events, December 17th. The ill-fated Jim Carrey version. And then on Christmas Day that year, we had the trio of... basically, it was a Fat Albert sandwich. We had Fat Albert in between the layers of more prestige bread, The Aviator, which was a Martin Scorsese film, and The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou, which was Wes Anderson, there on December 15th. And yeah, Fat Albert right there in the middle. Something for everybody that Christmas 2004. The runtime of the show here so far, we're looking at between 46 and 51 minutes per episode. In the Disney Plus original live-action programming timeline of things, we had Andor, of course, was September 21st this year. We had Werewolf by Night, October 7th. The Santa Clauses debuted November 16th. Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special, November 25th. Willow, which has been continuing to kind of chug along, debuted November 30th. National Treasure Edge of History here December 14th. And then don't have firm dates for any like future shows apart from Mandalorian season 3 is going to be coming back March 1st, 2023. Secret Invasion will be coming out, is slated for early 2023. Loki season 2 slated for mid 2023. And then on the Star Wars live action side of things, Ahsoka is slated for 2023 at some point. Our cast and crew, our roll call here. The director is Mira Nair, who's a Southeast Asian director, I believe Indian. She's directed projects like Mississippi Masala, The Namesake, Monsoon Wedding, and Salam Bombay, which was nominated for a Best Foreign Feature Academy Award, or Best whatever that category is.
Mississippi Masala in particular is a gorgeous movie, just beautiful, featuring like in his prime, super Denzel Washington. The movie's very famous for both of its leads are super attractive, and the movie is a super hot and steamy love story between the two of them. It is very, very good.
All right. And our writers here are Cormac and Marianne Wibberley. They, in addition to doing the screenplay for the original films, they also worked on projects like Charlie's Angels, Full Throttle, and Bad Boys 2. They are the created for television / written by credits for this particular episode. And then we also have the trio of like based upon the characters created by credits of Jim Koof, who, in addition to the original National Treasure, had worked on Operation Dumbo Drop and Rush Hour. Oren Aviv worked on the original National Treasure, and Charles Cigars worked on the original National Treasure. That was pretty much, especially those latter two, that was pretty much all they had really worked on. I think they've moved on more into like production or producing side of the industry at this point. Our cast of characters here, we have Lisette Oliveira as Jess. This is pretty much her breakout role. She was in a web series called Total Eclipse. And I only know that it is a web series because I was like, what is this? Like, it was 7 episodes or something like that. It was their most credited thing. I was like, what is this thing? What network was it on? So I can bring it up here. And it's like, it's a web series from blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, that's, yeah, I've definitely seen those on IMDb. So shout out to getting those credits. Zuri Reed playing Tasha. She's done a lot of miscellaneous TV work going back to her debut in a 2010 episode of Law & Order SVU. Antonio Cipriano playing Oren. Only a few years in the industry, going with miscellaneous credits going back to 2019. And, many of those years were pandemic years. So shout out to him getting work. Jordan Rodriguez, probably the most acclaimed of the younger cast, playing Ethan. He's in the Australian soap opera Home and Away for 214 episodes over the span of about a year, 2008 to 2009.
Cranking him out.
Huh?
Just cranking him out, yeah.
I mean, yeah. I looked because I saw 214 episodes. Like, that's got to be a soap, right? And I'd seen somewhere else that he's like an Australian actor, so I was like, yeah, it's probably an Australian soap. Looked it up. The people who are like the most credited are in the 4,400 episodes thing, going back to like the 70s.
Yeah.
So shout out to soap operas. But Jordan Rodriguez has also been in Lady Bird, the Greta Gerwig film from a few years back. And then he was in the film Light as a Feather. And there have been a couple of Mortal Kombat animated films in recent years where he has been the voice of Liu Kang. So shout out to that. Jake Austin Walker playing Liam. He has a number of miscellaneous credits going back to 2006, including the series Rectify and Stargirl. Catherine Zeta-Jones, our big like named actor and big bad of the series, as Billy, of course, kind of made her breakout role in the Mask of Zorro film, right alongside the not James Bond Sean Connery film Entrapment. The Chicago, we were talking a lot about Lord of the Rings before we started recording. I have distinct memories of like Chicago and Two Towers basically like in the same span of time. I think I probably like saw them with the same like high school girlfriend or something like that. She was also in Ocean's 12, which we mentioned earlier, basically came out right alongside the original National Treasure film. And most recently, she could be seen as Morticia Addams in the Netflix smash series Wednesday. And then lastly, because I had watched like nothing going into this about this movie, I was very surprised to see Harvey Keitel show up as Peter Sadusky.
Yeah.
But if you watch any trailer for this, it's immediately like giving away that he's in this, because that's basically the setup. But yes, Harvey Keitel reprising his role as Peter Sadusky, of course, from stuff like Taxi Driver, Bugsy, Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, Sister Act, Little Nicky, just because I like realizing he was the guy in Sister Act at the beginning of the movie, and then realizing that he's Nicky's father in Little Nicky. I was like, oh, yep, got to include those. Of course, the original National Treasure films. Most recently, projects like Grand Budapest Hotel and The Irishman. And I'll say just like he was the biggest surprise for me because again, I think I knew like Riley was going to be in this series eventually. I think I'd seen that news. I did not expect him, in part because as I was rewatching the original National Treasure, not like, hours before the first episode of this or whatever, I had forgotten he was in that movie even. He's like such a non-character in the first movie. It's so much more about like Nicolas Cage versus Sean Bean for so much of it that like,
Mhm.
oh, that's right, Harvey Keitel's in here as like another bad guy. And I haven't watched Book of Secrets in quite some time. I think he's more present in that one. But yeah, I was just like, oh, that's a character to bring back. Okay, sure. There we go. So yeah, it's pretty much those. That's our core cast for this first episode. But there are, as Frank and I have watched a few of the other episodes, I will give a shout out to a few other characters that get introduced. Both characters who will go on to be recurring characters, as well as just a couple more kind of like cameo level things. Armando Riesco and Lyndon Smith get introduced in the second episode as FBI agents in like Louisiana, Agent Hendricks and Agent Ross, respectively. Armando Riesco reprising his role as Agent Hendricks from the original National Treasure films. He's basically the one who like doesn't act on the tip in the first movie, like, and basically gets like talked down to. So it's like and now he's worked up in this series to like, you know, a department chief. So and the movie or the show very much kind of like plays into that. So cool to see that like they're honoring that little bit of continuity for this character. And then also the shocking thing that I found out when looking at his IMDb, he also was Jesse in the film Garden State. And if it's been a hot minute since you've watched the movie Garden State, Jesse is the guy who invents the silent Velcro. So they all go to his house for a big house party and like, oh yeah, that's definitely the same guy. And then Lyndon Smith, the other one I mentioned there, Agent Ross, is kind of the new rookie in the FBI. Just kind of get in the desk job. She kind of gets swept into the mystery at the center of things a little bit on the FBI side of things here. She previously was in the series Parenthood. Pulled this one just to maybe entice you to watch further, Logan. Kathleen York, who you would know as Representative Andy Wyatt or Congresswoman Andrea Wyatt from The West Wing. Toby's wife, on again, off again partner. Yeah. She's in here as Liam's mother slash Peter's daughter-in-law. So she's got a couple scenes over the course of a few episodes, I believe. Not in this first episode, but she gets introduced in later. And then eventually, come episode 4, finally is when he makes his return. Justin Bartha does a cameo as Riley Poole from the original films. He also was in stuff like Hangover and stuff like that. So yeah, it was very much like I know he's going to be in here somewhere, and this week we have gotten to where he is. Not a ton in the way of trivia here, but especially since we've kind of already covered this, but Harvey Keitel and later Armando Riesco and Justin Bartha are all reprising their roles from the original films, with Keitel, of course, as the main FBI investigator, Riesco as his subordinate Agent Hendricks, and Bartha as Riley Poole. So what did people think? Obviously, like myself and Frank were hooked enough to keep watching and whatnot. Logan, what did you think of this one, since you were the one that really wanted to originally dive in and have yet to watch any of the other episodes?
It's interesting. It's an interesting pilot. I'd be curious to see the next few episodes. There are elements I really like. I really like the cast of characters a lot, actually. Like I think that core foursome friend group is really fun and engaging, and
except for Oren. Oren is immediately the worst for bringing a cell phone into a escape room,
right? But like, and getting them disqualified in a very fun, real way, right? And I totally believe that as like a real friend group. That makes sense to me, right? And in particular, like the main kind of female best friend kind of duo there totally reads true as me, totally is authentic, and I love that. Like, I love that cast of characters there. And anytime they're on screen doing stuff, I really enjoy that. When it gets into the larger, like, kind of main overarching, like, treasure hunt stuff, I'm less in love with that. I'm less in love with Harvey Keitel and his appearance, actually, which is surprising because I love Harvey Keitel and I love his character in the first movie. Is like such a like fun, gruff, like grumpy man who's actually secretly on your side kind of thing. Like it's just like a weird it's just a weird version of that character, I think. And then and they
yeah,
try to like brush it up, being like, he's got dementia, so like whatever. But it's like it's just a weird version of that character, I think.
Yeah, real quick, I just want to jump on him in particular. I like he popped up. I was like, oh, he's here, and then he just gives like a long exposition dump with like very phoned in energy. I was like, okay, yeah, this isn't great.
Right.
Like I get he's the inciting incident and stuff like that, but yeah, it's kind of like okay, here's how they're tying it to the original. Fine,
and that they immediately kill him the next day he's dead. It's just like, all right, like
he's expensive, man. We can only afford him for so long.
Yeah, like everything about that is just like, I don't like that. I'd rather him like just not be on there than him just being like, oh, he's dead, so I don't have to worry about him ever again. It's just like, all right, well, he looked fine yesterday, and then it's like I don't love that.
Just as a minor spoiler / tease, they investigate whether or not he was, they investigate like the suspicious
was he murdered,
nature.
Right?
Yeah.
That makes sense, right? And like the stuff with him and Liam, right, his grandson, I don't know what happens yet. I'm sure, I mean, obviously it will be explored more in depth, like what led to their like fractured bond. But I thought, Harvey Keitel was like, oh, like I, am sad about that, but like, I'd like to reconcile. And then Liam's performance, I thought was really good, actually, up until the moment he was like, fuck my grandpa, basically. And it's like, whoa, okay. Like, I was like, and there's like, she's like, he wants to apologize to you. Like, he loves you. And he's just like, fuck him. And I was like, all right, like, that's a like, he had such a strong over the top reaction that I was like, what could he possibly have done to you that like has this strong reaction years later? So like, that was like, I was like, oh, okay. And like, I think the pilot is like sort of tonally, kind of together, like threads a line successfully. I mean, anything beyond the pilot episode, right? So I can't speak to that, but in the pilot, certainly like Catherine Zeta-Jones is just like having a ball, just being a hammy cartoon villain, like because that's all she is. Like even down to like the big like dun 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 moment at the pilot where she is like, I think it's Oren and like the locker, right? It's like, if you don't come here and give us the thing, we're gonna kill your friend, and she's having a blast. So I love that for her, right? Because she usually has to play such like. She's usually the straight man in anything she's into, more larger than life outlandish characters, going all the way back to Zorro to now. And even in Chicago, right? Like she's not the outlandish one as much as that's Renee Zellweger is, right? And so it's sort of fun to see her be such like hammy kind of character. I like the like fake feds idea in the first episode. I thought that was really funny. But it also sort of goes into the thing that is my single least favorite episode of the pilot. That is also my biggest area of concern for the series as a whole, which is in the original National Treasure, Nick Cage ultimately is just a regular dude. He's a normal dude. He's like, a PhD in discovering treasure or whatever, but he is a normal dude. Indiana Jones is a normal dude. Nathan Drake are normal people, right? That do like great, cool, exciting stuff. None of them, though, are Sean Spencer from Psych, which apparently this girl is, and their like ability to like be super perceptive and pick one. And it's like, I don't need that at all. I immediately didn't like it. I don't enjoy that aspect of it. I hope they don't carry it forward as like a big thing. But the fact that like she's basically like Sean from Psych, immediately I didn't like. I don't need her to be some sort of like superhero Sherlock Holmesy Sean Spencer kick here that we have her in the pilot episode that they like really lean into in certain moments. So that's definitely my biggest area of concern, the biggest thing that I didn't love. And so that is the thing that I'd be most curious to see how they handle kind of going forward. Because even like in the escape room where she's like, counting all the things on the wall and then immediately is like, oh, it's like 3143, like go. And I was like, all right, I don't need that. I don't need that at all. And she did it again later on. I was like, I don't need this.
I think that's as much as anything. I think that is that's how they're deciding to visually tell the story 15 years later, 18 years later, whatever. Like when we have had things like, the Sherlock Mind Palace as like a way to visually represent those kinds of things, especially like having just rewatched National Treasure. So much of those like Nicolas Cage pulling things out of his ass is just like, it's not visually engaging or anything. It is just like Nicolas Cage is just reciting things that he knows because he learned years ago, because he's been with that mystery and that, that fascination and with American history for his entire life, versus like this girl who is, I mean, as she kind of like, alludes to in the episode, is, this would be her dream job. She can't do it because of DACA and all that stuff, but like she is like the puzzle person, and is that. And so I think, as much as anything, that's how the show is basically saying, okay, here's how we're going to visualize how she got those things together. She's seeing the tally marks highlighted, and that's like, but like even that scene is like introduced. She has been sitting there for however long, counting all of those rows of hash marks and stuff. So like, it's just kind of like going back and say, like, giving a visual representation of her going in saying, okay, it was this many hash marks. How do I, like, how many years and months and days does that, equate out to? It's not, it is, psyche.
I would say for that particular, the reason that no one has ever solved that escape room is because that's an insane clue to ever expect anyone to get. That's an incredible, like, that is crazy to make the password that on, like, that's an absurd thing.
The weird thing for me is that the number of days is already a 4-digit number. So the fact that like
that
they don't
right.
try that 4-digit number and it spits out, and then she has to go in and like convert it to this many years, this many months, this many days. Like that's like, if you had given me like just even that as like a thing, I would have been like, okay, that's
still very tough, but it's at least better
like leap in logic.
But like, oh my god,
yeah, exactly. But yes, that is definitely like a escape room on hard mode to show how competent she is as a puzzle solver kind of thing. Yeah.
The thing that got me with that was like, I could believe an escape room doing something like that to get like the door code puzzle, but I'm like, the fact that you have to like tie all the sheets together to make like a thing against the screwdriver and then throw that over the lever, I was like, what escape room would ever like?
Yeah, that's definitely like I've never done an escape room. I played Escape Academy on Xbox Game Pass earlier this year, and it didn't have anything like, I mean, well, it definitely had some crazy stuff, but it was all like, okay, you got like, we're not giving you like a physical challenge here. It's all just, you have to like figure out the stuff. The way I have been thinking about this show since watching it is like, it is CW's take on National Treasure. It is a wildly attractive young cast of diverse, performers doing the National Treasure formula of stuff. And like, once I put myself into that mindset, it is just like, okay, this is just going to be, this isn't going to be a life-changing 45 minutes of television or anything like that, but I'm going to probably chuckle a couple times. I'm going to enjoy things, or I'm going to get mad at a character. Like that Oren coming out and getting them all disqualified and stuff like that. I was like, fuck Oren. So by the time he gets kidnapped at the end of the episode, I'm like, all right, yeah, good. You deserve it. Leave him be. He screwed you guys on the escape room. He deserves
Honestly,
that
might be like, you can just wrap up the podcast right there. That's gonna be like the best thing anyone's gonna say. It is, that is a great way to describe it. It is, the CW version of National Treasure is that immediately clicked for me. Yep, that's exactly what it is.
Yep. Any other thoughts from you, Frank, on the show?
Yeah, I enjoyed it because I think that is like kind of like you hit on. That is kind of the perfect way to put it, because like it doesn't have the same necessarily like energy or budget of like the first movie, but I still, at the end of the day, like had fun, and just putting it at like the one episode, I probably like at the end of the first episode, I was like, it was fun and like enjoyable, but I don't know if I like love it. And then the second episode was kind of losing me a little bit, but by the end of the second episode, and especially with everything in the third episode, which I think so far is like my favorite, I feel like now I'm totally on board. I'm like 100% in. And I think even a lot of the problems that like Logan cited, I think start to get alleviated as you like get further in. And they dive deeper into certain things, and you get more like treasure hunting, like going around doing fun stuff, like, and especially when you get a lot more of the like group dynamic coming together. And that's what I think is a part of a lot of the backbone of the show is just the group and their energy. And I do kind of like that between like the friendship energy and also some of the romantic like energy. Like I think it's definitely there. And I think it is definitely just like a fun time. Like,
Mhm.
and that's the thing, man. It's just fun. And I enjoy these kind of like Logan talked about too, like the National Treasure, Indiana Jones, Tomb Raider. Like we're just
Yeah, Tomb
solving
Raider.
clues, and it's always that next thing leading you to the next one. And then there's always like the bad guy that can't ever figure any of this out, or they're going down the wrong paths. And then like, but you're the main character always has like something, you know. And I think they do a good job too. And this is more for like some of the later episodes of different characters having different like expertise or like ideas that they bring to the table, and then that's why they work good together as like a group. Kind of going back to like them solving the escape room is like
Mhm.
they all kind of have their own part or like little thing they add, and I think that's like they do that I think pretty well.
Yeah, there's a specific moment in like one of the later episodes that is Oren doing the exact like Riley thing of like, oh, you guys don't know this? Well, here's the thing I know that you guys don't know, kind of thing. When every other point, it's been kind of the heavy hitters really solving the puzzles, but he comes in, with a clutch thing every now and then to kind of fulfill that role. And yeah, especially like the weakest aspect for me is the CW ness of it sometimes.
Mm.
Of like, obviously even in that first episode, it's you get these hints of like a will they won't they romance between Jess and Ethan, but then Liam gets brought into the picture, and now there's a love triangle thing at play there. And so like elements like that are like, okay, like I don't care about this. I'm not watching a National Treasure story for this kind of stuff. I'm watching it for whatever weird little history riffs you're going to take me on, that are like, that's not factual or anything like that, but you're gonna play with it anyway. uh and this one, I think, especially like the fact that this one is a Mesoamerican kind of treasure is certainly an interesting aspect to it. Even like the initial like introduction and setup of like all this happening in a Mexican city, and then immediately being introduced to a character who is a DACA child, and like so it also then kind of immediately sets the stakes of like, well, this probably can't be like a significantly globetrotting adventure, because if she leaves the country, she can't get back into the country. So what is that going to do? What is that going to entail? But and also obviously that it creates the added stakes of like, well, yeah, if she does a Declaration of Independence type theft, that's even worse for her. The As I kind of touched on, the like the Peter Sadusky-ness of it, of like that's how we're tying it into everything, is turns out he was secretly had his hands in
Mini
like way
pies,
more
right?
treasure
Yeah.
pots than I was like, all right. I mean, like,
Also, it's weird to imagine Harvey
I
Keitel
guess,
ever being from Louisiana. He's like such a New York dude that's like, all right, Louisiana, I guess is where you're gonna be from.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think even that is more like, I think they like settled down in Louisiana, I think is kind of how they end up
Maybe.
like playing that off later. But I guess no,
Because
because
there's
yeah,
a
he
Grand
was
Mason,
the
right? Yeah, it's
Grand
like a weird
Mason
thing.
there
Like, yeah,
at
okay.
yeah. But yeah, like like the Louisiana setting, certainly an interesting setting compared to other locations, and not a setting we get a ton in media. So yeah, it's an interesting little flavor. And I'll be curious to see. Like I'm certainly bought in enough, as we've touched on, that like I'm curious to see how this all plays out. I think especially as you get into more of the episodes, the Catherine Zeta-Jonesness there of just getting to kind of play the like mustache twirling villain is a lot of fun for her. And as the show continues to progress, much like Sean Bean, she is like a good foil for them, in that like if she can't solve like the clue herself, which in many cases she is also quite capable of doing it, she has the resources to get the person that can solve the clue for her or something like that. And so like it is constantly like, the kids are doing one thing and then she's kind of doing something else, and keeping everybody on their toes and stuff. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how that continues to play out.
It's totally like the scrappy underdogs with like no money versus just this person with like infinite resources.
Mm-hmm.
Even the way they show her, where she's just on like a private jet globetrotting around, like that one villain from like the Fast and the Furious.
Yes, yeah, she's the Charlize Theron of this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm trying to think. In that first episode in particular, obviously we talked about the prison, like the prison break is that the it's, I guess that's like the big puzzle of the first one, and the fact that like she's working at a storage unit. Did that give you any kind of trauma there, Frank?
Oh yeah, God, yeah, I know, right? Like, oh man.
As that is quite inside baseball, Frank had an incident where some items were stolen from a storage unit recently, which was quite unfortunate. And I definitely was thinking, when so much of this first episode is taking place there, I was like, oh god.
And he has all these like rare antiques in there, and I'm like, these would absolutely get stolen.
Yeah, right. But yeah, so like she figures out, that it was an alias and whatnot, and that was kind of like the first. I was like, oh, who is this gonna? Like, in part, I was like, who is this gonna be? Is this going to be, the bad guys thing? Because also we get introduced to Catherine Zeta-Jones, like coming in and like tearing down the wall from somebody else's house. So like at first I was like, oh, was that like, because the prequel or the prologue basically gives us Peter Sandusky having like giving some like backstory stuff as we see like the flashbacks to 1999 Mexico or 2001 Mexico or something like that. And so I was like, oh, maybe he died and now the story is continuing. She's like in his house. There was like a lot of confusion over the beginning, like introductions and stuff like that. But when it is like eventually, oh, it's okay, it's his. I think it's the biggest leap in logic is that this guy who's super secretive, so much so that he's like redacted in various things in later episodes. The fact that like he is, all of his like keywords pop up in an obituary for his son. I was like, all right, I feel like that would be not how that plays out.
Yeah, well, you can just Google Freemason and then keywords, and it gives you a list of people.
I also, that's what I was about to. And also just like the whole scene of him, like the two of them together at his like house, right? And like they're like, oh, it's Harvey Keitel, cool. And then he immediately basically just like, oh, I trust you. I'm gonna give you all this information because you're wearing the necklace. And it's like she could have easily got the necklace from someone else and be posing as this person and just be lying. But he immediately just like, I can tell. She's the one. I'm going to give her all this information. I'm going to give her the treasure map of the thing. Like, do all stuff. And it's like, I don't know, man. Your nurse literally just said you were super paranoid. You don't seem that paranoid to me, man. You seem pretty chilled and trusting to people that you just met right now. And because he's like, oh, you were able to figure it out? Yeah, all right, cool. I'll give it all to you. And it's like, okay.
Mm-hmm. I won't get into spoilers, but there are some things in later episodes that lead to the idea that maybe he knew more about who she was than he lets on in that first scene. It's a stretch even there, but like the things we learn about Peter and like his quest for trying to find answers and solutions on this brings it more into Jess's orbit than is introduced in that first episode. So I, especially retroactively, I buy it more so that like the necklace was enough of a signpost for him to like buy in. Also realizing that he doesn't know how much time he has left, and hey,
not even a day.
Please give this to Liam. Yeah, it's very much like that whole thing is so much more like a logistical pragmatism than like natural storytelling of like, hey, we're only going to be able to get Harvey Keitel for one episode, so we're going to make the most out of this one episode. We're gonna give him all of the exposition dump. he's gonna narrate. He's gonna have to do all this heavy lifting, and we're going to build the rest of the season around that. Is very much how a lot of that feels. Any other favorite moments or least favorite moments from this first episode?
I mean, I think ultimately I'm curious to see, like I said, where would we go from here? I think it's a good opening episode and a good first step. I'd be curious, and I mean, we easily can because we're in control of what we watch and don't watch. To do like a season recap here, and I guess what 6 weeks roughly, and like take stock of it there once we kind of have the totality of the 10 episodes and see kind of how we feel. Maybe I'm super curious to see. Will we see Nick Cage? Will we see Diane Kroger in the like series ever? Get anything with them and kind of more from the Trevor saying words. Where yeah,
I don't imagine so. And I'll say like in episode 4 when Riley shows up, he does a lot of like name dropping, or he's like on the phone with Ben, or he calls Ben to try and like ask him a question kind of thing. And it's very much like they're not going to be showing up. So like that's how he's going to like communicate with them.
He's like, they're both retired, but they like do, Mia and Paul Walker's character from Fast and Furious, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He does give a and a lot of like articles have been writing up stuff about it. He does give some like pretty blatant like, hey, maybe this is what National Treasure 3 will be about kind of hooks.
Here's National Treasure 3, make it happen.
I'd be like, hell yeah, let's do
it. Kind of like specific, like, because people like he shows up at a thing and people are specifically asking like, so what are you working on now? What are you and Ben working on? And he kind of like alludes to it. And he's like, well,
goddamn Dorado.
You might have blah 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 to follow along. Or
I do like the idea that
it's very much like
Nick Cage's character, who has, mind you, in his 2 prior movies, stolen the Declaration of Independence and kidnapped the President of the United States of America, is like a famous celebrity everybody's like asking questions about now, right? I love that vibe for Nick Cage here in the National Treasure series universe.
Since I did watch the rest of the episodes, I don't remember if it comes up in the first episode, but effectively they do. It's the same kind of thing that like Ant-Man has a podcast in the MCU. Riley has a podcast that is how more and more people know about the events of National Treasure 1. And stuff like that. So that's and Oren in particular is a big fan of
we love
the
Oren
podcast. I will say like this, especially talking about it with you guys. I think this has a lot of the same like vibes of like that first episode we did of Andor, where it was like first couple episodes here are very like place setting and kind of like putting the pieces into place. And episode 3 where they kind of do this little heist mission is like a real like, all right, lock in kind of moment for the show. And so, yeah, I think I don't imagine it will have like the, anywhere near the heights of Andor, as we move forward and stuff, but it was very much like translating National Treasure from like a film idea of a couple hours into a 10 episode arc. It is very much like they don't have like a beginning, middle, end in that first episode, or at least not like a particularly satisfying one. The cliffhanger at the end there with Oren is like, okay, that is supposed to try and like get you to the next episode. But I think it much like those, the fact that the first 3 episodes of Andor dropped all together, I think it would have been interesting if more of this had dropped kind of at once, for people to really hop in and be like, okay, like now I want to see where the rest of this story goes.
I think they do a really good job with that, because this is kind of getting into some of the future episodes, and I won't say what happens, but I feel like at the end of every episode, I'm always just want to know what's going to happen. Like I feel like they always do such a good job of like, oh, cool, and then now this, or what are we going to do now, or whatever. And I'm like, that's like, I feel like they do that a lot better than like other shows I've seen, even to entice me to just like want to know what's going to happen. And that's like, because that's what episode 2. I kind of didn't love a lot of episode 2, and I can't even really necessarily put my finger on why. It was just starting to lose me. And then at the end, when it's like, and then this, and I'm like, all right, well, that sounds fascinating. Like, so let me go into the next one. And then episode 3 is great. And then that even does the same thing where whenever we get done with this, I'll go watch episode 4, because I'm like, well, now I want to know what's going on with this. Like, And I'm still like, I'm super interested to just see like where the series goes and like what they do, especially based off of just like unless they do something wild that just totally loses me, I feel like I'm going to be invested the whole time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, it is CW National Treasure. So it is, beautiful people going on these globetrotting adventures or these Louisiana trotting adventures. So you've always got something nice that you're looking at for the stuff. So there's that as well. In particular, the main girl Jess. Anytime I'm like looking at her, she's like, I got to imagine like the casting breakdown was like a Zendaya type, because like that's what I'm seeing with her, or with Oren. I keep seeing the guy who was in the P.S. I Love You, To All the Boys movies, rather. That guy, the Noah Centineo, I believe is the actor's name. Like he very much reads as like a Noah Centineo type.
Who loves sneakers and good deals.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Sneakerheads. Yeah. It's I'm hooked enough, especially right now where there aren't other things really grabbing me or pulling me in. It is like a nice,
that's a good point too.
That's a thing I can like continue to come back to here in the weeks to come. I might not like check in every week, but
make sure you watch it.
If I don't, a few weeks will go by and I'll be like, okay, I'm going to throw that on in the background while I do something else for an hour and a half, and kind of get caught up. So yeah, I'll be curious to see where it goes. And I'll be especially curious to see if they actually get enough traction to be like, all right, yeah, let's go ahead and I think at this point, I imagine it's not a matter of like, I imagine Disney would greenlight National Treasure 3. I imagine it's probably like getting Nicolas Cage to come back and do it, is probably the real hook of things. So, maybe they'll do it and get, they'll throw enough money at him that it'll all come together. Who knows? And then, hey, maybe there will be some crossover between the show and National Treasure 3. We shall see. All right, let's dive into the report card where you grade from A+ to F. Logan, I will give it to you first. You were the one that kind of wanted to jump into this. How did it meet expectations, and what grade do you want to give this?
It's a really good question. I would I wasn't ready for it. No, I would give it probably, it's really close to me between a C+ and a B-. Ultimately, I'm going to give it a grade based on its potential. So I'm going to give it a B-, right? Because I think I can see it growing and evolving and kind of exploring really fun new directions and heist and that kind of stuff. So I'm going to give it a B-, right? Because there is so much, I think, that has potential, right? The fact that it is a CW show of National Treasure, that can be a bad thing, but also can be a really fun, good thing. I mean, I think certainly most of us here liked a lot of the CW shows like Arrow, Flash, et cetera, and so we had a lot of fun with those. And if it's,
and that's, yeah, I specifically go with CW because it's not Disney Channel. It's not Disney Channel movie or Disney Channel quality stuff. It is like, we're gonna take 20 somethings,
throw them into the story, right? Definitely, right. And I think that immediately clicked for me, right? That makes something that can be really exciting. And I do think the chemistry of the core cast is really good and a lot of fun. And so if nothing else, I'm excited to just see more of the four of them doing stuff together. And even if I don't love the necessarily kind of overriding treasure hunt, it only matters so much, right? If kind of the journey to get there is a blast. So I'm going to give it a B-.
Mm-hmm. I will say, knowing your kind of like concern about the psychness and the Sean-ness of this, I imagine I can't like go through and like think of other, like there are probably other moments like that over the course, but I think the thing that will get you a little bit more is that like it is effectively each of the other characters has like their level of expertise or something that's going to be like, all right, but is that really believable? Like just to throw it out there, like Tasha,
she's an influencer too, right? I did love that. Yeah,
she's an influencer, but she also turns into like the super hacker. It's like
okay,
it's like, oh, okay, that kind of comes out of nowhere, but sure, go for it.
Just like, I'm gonna hack the mainframe.
I mean, yeah, pretty much like she hacks into various things, including the bad guys like servers and stuff like that. And
Orin is not just a sneakerhead; he's also a world class sprinter, right?
Yes, I mean, no, he's kind of still Orin. He is the goof kind of thing, but he'll pull something. But and then like it gets introduced a little bit in that first episode. But like Ethan is the like he knows the law. He's kind of the pre-law or
Brainiac,
whatever. So he'll kind of have like that segment locked down, and then Liam is there for like the music history side of things and stuff,
and he knows how to use like music software. Where he knows he knows how to use Audacity.
As we're talking about this, it's also and I think you're on this train, and I definitely know Jazz was. It's also like there are also leverage vibes to it.
That's definitely Jazz. That's all of Jazz. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah. No, and I definitely know Jazz is leverage. I didn't remember.
I'm not as big into leverage now, but I immediately understand that reference.
Yeah. All right. So B minus from Logan. How about you, Frank? Where do you want to give it?
I'm in a similar territory. I was already kind of sitting at like the B minus or B, and honestly, like some of the future episodes, especially like episode 3, I do think boosts it up to a B for me. Because it's like it's good. It's doesn't do anything I think is like particularly amazing or like worth like being like, hey, this is why this is really great. Other than like, hey, they got a good cast, they got a fun story, and I like some of the things they're touching on. So that's why it kind of sits for me, and I am kind of curious to see how it'll feel at like the end when they wrap everything up and just kind of where they end up going and what they end up doing and like just how I feel at the end. Because like right now, if they were like, hey, and we're doing a season 2 or whatever, I'd be interested. And even if they were like, hey, we're just going to do like a National Treasure series where each season's like a new group of people going on like an adventure, like I think that would even be like super cool. And that's just kind of where I'm at like right now. Like I definitely want more of this.
That's
or, like,
a really
this
cool
type of vibe.
idea, actually.
Yeah. I think I'm pretty much with you there. It's a B for me. It's a good fun time. It's not like nothing is terrible in there. It is very much like if you like the National Treasure formula, it's doing that. It's doing it over a much more stretched out time. So you're going to get like more clues spread out over a 10 episode run instead of a 2-hour movie. But it's fun. Because it has more time, it does have more time for interplay between the cast. And I think it is the chemistry of the cast is a lot of fun, bringing them kind of all together. And again, like like once I have it in mind of this is CW National Treasure, I can kind of like turn off the part of my brain that would be like, I hate all of these, like, will they, won't they, like very like formulaic and like telegraphed relationships and stuff like that. And just be like, all right, I'm just going to be along for the ride. Whatever. Let's just have fun. Tell me fun little puzzle things, and I'll see if I can solve them with or before the cast and all that stuff. Whatever. So yeah, it is a B for me as well. Extra credit, other suggestions if you like this. You have the original National Treasure and National Treasure Book of Secrets films. Definitely go check those out. You have the Jungle Cruise movie, Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl, The Chronicles of Narnia, specifically Prince Caspian. The Kid Who Would Be King, Percy Jackson and the Olympians, Lightning Thief, and Free Guy. I think this is the most eclectic mix of like movie suggestions that Disney Plus has ever thrown out at me. Because it is just
outside
like,
of
that's kind of all over the map on some of those options.
Yeah.
Well, Darby O'Gill gives a whole bunch of suggestions based on Darby O'Gill that like match the Darby O'Gill energy. This is like, okay, you're like, obviously the National Treasure ones, sure, get that. Prince Caspian, the third Chronicles of Narnia movie I would think of, and Pirates is like a whole completely different place. Kid Who Would Be King.
That's the
like
most left
modern. Yeah. And then like Percy Jackson and then Free Guy to close it all out. It's just like
We need
this
to
is
hit a
all
certain
over the
quota.
place. They don't know what
Yeah,
kind of movie.
like, what do we got?
They don't know
Yeah.
what kind of movie National Treasure book or Edge of History is. Okay. But yes, those are your other suggestions.
Shout out to Jungle Cruise though, because that was like that's a fun movie, and it's surprisingly like Uncharted and like National Treasure, and like it. I didn't get that. Yeah, like I didn't going into it. I didn't really know what to expect, and then watching it, I was like, oh, I actually really like this because it is totally just that vibe, and I'm happy that we're getting things like this again.
Yeah,
because we went so long without like National Treasure and like Mummy movies and Indiana Jones and stuff.
Yeah, that's exactly when Jungle Cruise came out last year. It was like, okay, this is a fun, mindless thing that is. It's not as good as The Mummy or as good as Indiana Jones or National Treasure or like, but it is very much like in the spirit of all of those movies, like bringing them all together. Like even Pirates of the Caribbean. Like it was basically it's pulling things from all of these other movies and ideas and throwing them into this, and it's fine. But yeah, it was like it's a fun enough adventure to turn your mind off for a couple hours and just kind of like enjoy Dwayne Johnson and Emily Blunt. Sure, have fun. Extracurriculars. You guys watching anything else on Disney Plus this last week or last couple weeks?
Still watching Andor. Haven't made much progress in it, but I'm excited to get through the rest of it and kind of finish that show.
Okay. How about you, Logan? Anything from you?
I don't think so. Time's a bit of a flat circle, right, in a holiday week, but I don't think I have, right? We've been watching, Shabby got me into Bob's Burgers. We've watched a lot of that. And then I've just sort of had a Bond movie on in the background most days. As you do. It's like, that's the thing, because like she didn't get back until, again, like 8-9 p.m. on Christmas Day, right? So like the 23rd, 24th, 25th, I had all those days off. And so I basically made it into like a mini Bond marathon, right? Like you would get like back on like TBS or Spike back in the day, right? Just being like, yeah, I'm just going to throw in like TNT, right? Yeah, exactly. And just like, so I watched like 4 Bond movies during that day. And I chose like a bunch of like okay Bond movies because that feels the most authentic. Like they never showed the best ones. It was always like, just like, you're gonna watch Furies Only like 4 times in a row, and it's like, all right, okay. And so I did that, and then I gave myself a treat at the end and watched The Living Daylights because that movie is still fantastic, and Timothy Dalton is so good. And like my hot take, Trevor, and it might be just because like I've watched it more recently, but like Living Daylights, I might even like a little bit more than Goldeneye. It's really close. Living Daylights is such, like, Timothy Dalton is so good in that movie. And I love him in Cars relationship that movie. So I had like kind of a mini Bond marathon. Is mostly what I've been doing. We're gonna watch. It's not Disney Plus, but I'm gonna talk about it anyway because I'll talk about it on another podcast soon. Probably we're gonna watch Glass Onion tomorrow.
Hell yeah, I need to watch that.
And then we're just gonna watch Logan Lucky as well because Robbie's never seen it, and that's exactly it's gonna be a treat.
That's where he tested out the Benoit Blanc character.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Frank.
Sorry, I was just like, that's such a funny movie where I'm like, oh yeah, you know when Kylo Ren and James Bond rob
Magic Mike, right, is there
NASCAR
too, right?
racetrack? Yeah, and then Peter Griffin is a race car team owner, and then the Winter Soldier is a race car driver. Like that's just such a crazy movie.
The weird thing for me with because it was that movie and the second Kingsman movie, both like I watched them both like pretty close together, and both of them have like a very pivotal scene featuring the John Denver West Virginia song. And it's like weird that like both of them were really hitting that hard. But that's gonna be fun. I saw Glass Onion back when it was
I know you were
that
so
weekend was in theaters.
I'm so jealous.
Really enjoyed it. And so as everybody's been like posting all of their thoughts now that it's on Netflix, I'm like, yay, I'm glad you are all enjoying
I will
this
say
now.
So annoyed that it's not in
go ahead.
theaters. It was like beyond that 1 week. So annoyed.
Yeah.
Because
it's
definitely a weird like. Netflix just
I know,
doesn't
reading
like
stories like movie theater owners like begging them to like play it in the theater for like longer. Like it's doing very well. Please let us play it longer. And they were just like, nope. And it's like, take my money, Netflix. Let me watch it.
Especially the fact that it was like it was in theaters for that week and then
For like a
didn't come to
month?
Netflix for like another month. It was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
what? Like, why was
Yeah.
that the choice?
So weird.
Put it in theaters, and then if they didn't go to theaters, okay, now they can go see it on Netflix. Weird. You paid all that money
Because-
for it. Why did you do it that way? You're weird, Netflix.
I-
But I'm glad people
didn't
are enjoying it.
realize-
I'm tempted to re up my Netflix subscription just so I
yeah.
can watch it again and catch up on some of the other Netflix things that I've missed in the recent months. What were you saying, Frank?
Sorry there. I didn't even realize that it was in theaters only for like a week. And so I had plans to go see it when it came out and we had to reschedule. And it was like, oh, whatever, the
Yeah.
movie's out. We'll go see it whenever. No big deal. And then the next Tuesday, I'm looking for tickets and it's already gone. And I'm just like, okay, wow, I guess it was out of theaters already. Like, and then I'm like, when does it come to Netflix? 3 weeks from now. I was like, and I've been waiting just for it to come out. And then now it's already become that thing of I keep forgetting that it is finally out already. And like I meant to watch it this past weekend for the Christmas break when it just kind of had nothing going on. And now I'm like, I just keep forgetting every night that I'm like, oh yeah, I need to sit down and watch all of Glass Onion.
Yeah, definitely. I'll definitely be curious to hear you guys'
Yes.
thoughts on that one. As for me, Disney Plus, I watched on Christmas Eve. I went back and rewatched the Muppet Christmas Carol with the like complete edition now, which you can watch. Basically, they've restored the song that they cut from the theatrical release. You can now like go into the extras menu and watch the whole thing. So I did that and enjoyed
Love
that while I was like wrapping presents and stuff like that. That was just a nice evening. As I mentioned before watching this, I rewatched the original National Treasure, had a good time with that, continued watching the other episodes of this. And then today I threw on just as a because it's a 45-minute thing, and the Encanto live at the Hollywood Bowl, where they basically did a concert at the Hollywood Bowl with most of the original cast performing like all the numbers and stuff like that. And so and doing it live, and you know, it's really fun seeing it's fun seeing Stephanie Beatrice just like as Mirabelle doing it live, and especially as like somebody who loved her as Rosa, and I'm just like, I love getting to see her like levels of success. But then like all the other like cast members that weren't as visible getting their moment to shine. And especially like the audience reaction shots of that were a lot of fun, because it is just like parents that were there with their kids, and like, you know, all of the kids freaking out about like during We Don't Talk About Bruno and all that stuff. Shout out to, there's a weird like cutaway where Laura Bailey is there with her kid.
Love that.
So she was there watching live and stuff and got caught by one of the cameras. So that was a funny little like, oh hey, there's Laura Bailey, neat.
That's really cute.
So yeah, that's the other stuff I've been watching on Disney Plus. And yeah, we'll see if we keep following up and checking in on the rest of this series as we go. I don't know necessarily what we're gonna lock in for next week's episode. I kind of want to do Strange World though, which was the like most recent theatrical release that bombed in theaters because they didn't market it worth a shit, and is already on Disney Plus now. So
That was the animated one?
yeah, it's their most recent
okay.
animated film that came out like Thanksgiving weekend or something like that, and then just like did not debut well, did not do well. It was funny being at Disneyland beginning of the month, and they had like over in Tomorrowland, they had like a little like take a picture in front of like the like a little like scene of Strange World kind of thing. So they're like pushing it and like just watching kids go like walk by and be like, what's that, mommy? Because nobody knew what it was supposed to be. But yeah, so maybe we'll do that for next week's episode, or we'll figure something else out here. But yeah, so that is going to do it for this week's episode of That D Plus Show. Thank you for joining me to talk about National Treasure: Edge of History. You can follow Logan at Lefty Logie, Loggy. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Logan?
I will give a shout out to Let's Plays going live Tuesday and Thursday by Trevor Starkey. Going through Sky. He building Lego sets. Me and Frank have some ideas for stuff we might be doing on the Let's Play front soon when we get together. So that's super exciting. And I'm sure Trevor and Cameron probably will have some ideas they can have as well. So stay tuned to all the fun, exciting Let's Play content coming forward. Very exciting stuff.
Cool. Yeah, especially this week here, this last week of 2022, I basically recorded and have been releasing a extra Let's Plays, one every day, basically, of like all of the games I was trying to squeeze in before year end for Game of the Year consideration. Started off with Elden Ring, and I will say here, the Let's Play that went up was my second Let's Play attempt of Elden Ring. The first one I got so mad at an hour and a half into recording that I just ended the thing and deleted it off the computer immediately. So the Let's Play that actually went live was me being like, all right, let me try it again. Different build. I'm going to go with the build that like worked for me in Demon Souls, more ranged kind of magic user versus like the, up close hack and slash that I tried the first time. Much better, much smoother run in that the attempt that I published to the world. But yeah, so Elden Ring's out there, Bear and Breakfast, handful of games. I think what are still to come as of I believe the ones that haven't gone live yet are High on Life and Immortality. But basically, there's going to be like one every day here at the end of the year for 2022. So go check out youtube.com/thatnerdysite for all of those. Frank, what do you want to give a shout out to? You can follow Frank at Irrelevant Jokes on Twitter.
I really want to echo that shout out because that's what I wanted to give a shout out to too, because I love seeing your reactions to the games. Because even like you hinted at with Elden Ring there, where you were like, why do I keep doing this to myself? And then with Stranger in Paradise, that made me laugh seeing that pop up, because I was like, yeah, Game of the Year contender, Stranger in Paradise.
Yeah, like I'm a big Final Fantasy person, so I wanted to give Stranger in Paradise a chance. And as I also tweeted out, like, I originally did a demo Let's Play of that one with very similar results to that initial Elden Ring run, where I got to the boss of the demo, and the demo did not have difficulty settings like the rest of the proper game did when it came out. So I died multiple times against that boss and just got to the point where I cut it off and was like, this is never going live. It's definitely not like. And I mean, full transparency, I have not gone back to it since that Let's Play, so it won't even really get enough of a look in there for Game of the Year. It was very much like if somehow it hooks me, I'll give it a shot and keep playing it. But some of the other games did instead, and I was like, all right, these are the ones that like resonate with me a little bit more, that I'm going to take some time here in this last week before the end of the year to put into, see if I can finish. And so Bear and Breakfast is one that I have put a lot of time into and will discuss in my eventual list. And then the two that are still to come out of High on Life and Immortality, both of those were like short enough games that I was able to just kind of like knock them all out. It was like all right. A lot of it was like, what do I want to do for like, I have all of this time off now. I'm off this week between Christmas and New Year's. We didn't have That Nerdy Site show this last week, so I basically spent like Christmas Eve and Christmas Day recording a lot of Let's Plays for the like, and I just got to the point where I was like, all right, well, I have enough that I'll just do like one a day rather than like revisit Skyrim and start doing that stuff. So you can find me at Trevor J Starkey, and that's my shout out as well, is go check out all the Let's Plays and yeah, if you want to see me, I definitely don't get nearly as frustrated as I did in the one that I just rage deleted off of my computer for Elden Ring. But there are definitely a few times in the Elden Ring one where I'm like, well, that was cheap bullshit. Go check out all that fun stuff. You follow all the latest from us over at That Nerdy Site, including what will inevitably here in the next few weeks be our Game of the Year content, as well as maybe some articles and write-ups on favorite movies of the year and other stuff like that. If you like what you heard, please, once again, like, rate, review, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Thank you for joining us. As always, stay nerdy, be good to each other, and class dismissed.